نعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. We seek refuge in Allah from the accursed shaitan. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, most merciful, especially merciful. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana. Glory be to you, O Allah. There is no knowledge for us except that which you teach us. Allahumma 'allimna ma yanfa'una. O Allah, teach us that which will be beneficial for us. Wazidna ilma, and increase us in knowledge. Warzuqna fahma, and grant us understanding. Ya muqallib al-qulub, O change of hearts. Thabbit qulubana ala dinik, keep our hearts firm on your deen. Allahumma ja'al a'malana khalisatan liwajhik. O Allah, grant actions to be done sincerely for your sake. Wa la taj'al fiha haddan lighayrik, and let there not be in them a portion for other than you. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Are you able to hear me? Yes? No? Anyone? Okay, you can just, oh yes, okay, you can hear me. Okay, that's great. Alhamdulillah. Okay, so before we begin, I'd just like to let everyone know about our upcoming Ramadan goal journal. That's going to be our goal journal and accountability group that will be taking place in the month of Ramadan. So the accountability group will be starting on the 1st of April, and you will get an ebook along with it. We are also having the journal printed, so if you want a physical copy of it, you can get your hands on that. Also, if you don't want to be part of the accountability group but you just want the journal to work through on your own, you can also get that from us. So at the moment it's in the process of being printed, and they will be ready in time for Ramadan, inshallah. After Ramadan, we will continue with our other language programs. We've got Arabic language courses. We've got at various levels, and also Turkish and Spanish that is being taught. So do make a note about those upcoming courses that we have running. We'll be having Sheikh Ahmed Al-Azhari again with another Islamic psychology course as well. So to keep you posted about that, make sure you are in one of our WhatsApp groups. Please also make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also watch our past webinars on our YouTube channel. So do make sure that you are subscribed to that. Also follow us on social media, on our Facebook page, Muslims Connected, and on Instagram at Muslims_connected. Okay, so for today's webinar, the questions, they'll be in a Google form. No, are they they're just gonna go into the chat box. Okay, so for today's session, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, you can put them in the chat box, and then they will be answered at the end of the webinar. Okay, so let's dive right into today's webinar, which is on nutrition in Ramadan by dietitian Salaamah. Salaamah Solomon is a registered dietitian. She obtained her BSc in dietetics at the University of the Western Cape in 2010. She's experienced in dietary management of medical conditions in adults in both public and private sector. She's currently a clinical dietitian working at a tertiary government hospital for the past 9 years, currently pursuing a master's degree in public health nutrition with a special interest in diabetes in Ramadan. Her interests include Islamic knowledge, public health, and nutrition. So that is our presenter today, Salaamah Solomon. I will now hand over to her to present today's session.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can everyone hear me? Okay, so I can start. And can everyone see the shared screen? think I shared it now. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. So today I'm going to be, or tonight, I'll be speaking about nutrition in Ramadan. Very intense topic. Okay, Bismillah. There we go. So just a disclaimer, I'm a clinical dietitian working at a tertiary government hospital. I'm not an Islamic scholar, nor am I a medical doctor, and therefore I cannot answer any questions of that nature. And unfortunately, I'm not in private practice at the moment, so also I cannot do any private consultations. Okay, so this is just an outline of what will be covered in my talk. Okay. So the first thing is Ramadan fasting regulations. So I'm going to go through some basic things, but I think it's important to highlight it just so that you can understand the progression of my talk and where it's going. Okay, so the basic purpose of fasting, as you know, as Muslims during Ramadan, is to change usual behaviors, to enhance the virtue of self-control, to cleanse the body, to empathize with people that are less fortunate, to carry out more good deeds, and ultimately to seek nearness to Allah. Now, Ramadan, maybe there will be some facts here that you didn't know about. So it's a fast for 29 to 30 days, and it occurs about 10 to 11 days earlier each year, as it's part of the lunar calendar. So that means in your lifetime, if Allah gives you a long umr, inshallah, you can experience Ramadan in all the 4 seasons. And the duration of the fast is from dawn to sunset. So that's from your suhoor time until the iftar time. So before Fajr till Maghrib time. And the length between between dawn and sunset, or the length of the fast, can be any time between 11 to 22 hours, depending on where you are in the world. And Ramadan fasting is during those periods, but then the eating patterns is shifted exclusively to nighttime eating. And then we refrain from foods and drinks, including oral medications, sexual activity, and smoking. And there's the additional nocturnal prayer or the night prayer, which is Taraweeh, on top of our usually obligatory prayers. It's an important part of practicing the Islamic faith, and it's anticipated by all Muslims with spiritual excitement. Someone's getting excited and drawing on the screen. Okay. So it's going a bit faster than. Okay, so anyway, exempted vulnerable groups would be the elderly, the sick, the traveler, the pregnant and breastfeeding, and the menstruating female. And missed or broken fasts are compensated after Ramadan. Now, for those that have to fast outside of Ramadan, for the compensation that they have to do when the rest of the community is not fasting, that can be quite challenging. So these people, they may be discouraged from taking advantage of the granted exemptions that the religion gives them. And they will fast anyway. So there is an intense desire to fast, even among those who could not or should not fast. And they are sometimes unaware of the potential risks that this could put them at. Okay, but some do participate in voluntary fasts outside of Ramadan. So that would be some days in Sha'ban. So some of us have been doing that now already. And then there are 6 days in Shawwal. And we're doing this to anticipate the additional reward. Now let's go into the effects of fasting. Okay, so the physical changes, I'm going to be very basic in what I'm going to explain. And I call Ramadan the Islam's built-in weight loss plan because of these physical changes that happens. So during your fast, when you are not eating for that extended period of time, the body starts using your energy or your glucose that's stored in your body. And then once the glucose is used up, the body starts breaking down fat stores. Now, breaking down fat stores dissolves your toxins, and that's stored in your fat cells. So a natural detox process will happen. And also cholesterol levels in the blood can potentially be lowered. Fast is broken at iftar time. So that's in allowing you enough time to restore your energy levels and your glucose supply in your body, and it spares your protein stores. So if your fast had to extend longer than the recommended or the time that we are fasting for Ramadan, it would be classified as starvation, and also your body will start using of your proteins from your muscles. So enough weight loss can be achieved to improve conditions such as diabetes, blood pressure, high blood pressure, and cholesterol levels in the blood. And during this fasting period, endorphins are released, and this helps with better mood, feeling more alert and focused. And also there's an added benefit of improved immunity. So the body removes old and damaged cells. And with regards to the mental and spiritual changes, so Ramadan can also be seen as Islam's yearly reformer. So a sense of fulfillment in participating in all of these aspects of Ramadan. And there's also an improved in self-control, we hope, and an ability to resist temptations. And then there's a greater sense of empathy with those that are less fortunate. Because we are fasting, we can really feel how it's the hunger that we are supposed to feel. And we participate in extra sunnah practices for greater spiritual benefit. So overall feelings of well-being. So the lifestyle changes in Ramadan and during so I would say that it is Islam's less is more, as in less dunya is more akhirah. With regards to your sleeping patterns, so the sleep ideally or usually is less in Ramadan. So there's earlier mornings and late evenings. And with regards to your meal plans, your meal patterns, we are moving from 3 meals and snacks in between to 2 meals and optional snacks. And then with regards to physical activity, most people do tend to be less physically active during Ramadan, during the day, and they're potentially doing more physical activity during the night, and that's the Taraweeh prayer. And there's a reduction in vices such as smoking. And also there is very important to note, there would be medication adjustment that's needed. So your daylight medication is not taken, and adjustments should be done with the guidance of your GP, your doctor, your physician. Now that is all the positives, and there are potential adverse effects in Ramadan. So for certain vulnerable groups, the sleep deprivation and disruption of the circadian rhythm, so wake and sleep cycle that you go through, this can lead to changes in your body, and it can lead to increased fatigue. So that's chronic tiredness and reduced cognition, the way you're thinking and you're focusing. And then your blood sugar levels does change because of this fasting period. And it can cause you to feel unwell, and especially those with diabetes. And there's heightened feelings of fear for chronic disease patients, and it's related to the complications of their conditions. And there's also a short-term feeling of stress, anxiety, irritability, and agitation. It's commonly known as hangry. And I just added the slide to just highlight specifically to people with diabetes. These are the risks that are involved depending on how well managed their diabetes is, but they can have very high blood sugar levels. And if their blood sugar levels go more than 16.7, you have to break your fast. And they can have also very low blood sugar levels, and that is when it's less than 4, so it's 3.9 or less. And they also need to break their fast. It can lead to a condition called diabetic ketoacidosis or dehydration and thrombosis, and that's especially in countries with hotter weather and longer fasts. So these are just things to keep in mind. Now, this image, sorry if it's a bit fuzzy, but it's from an old study that just shows the changes in blood sugar levels in a healthy individual that happened normal feeding, meaning outside of Ramadan. And then the third bar is during Ramadan fasting. And the last one is prolonged fasting, so starvation. So the first one on top, that is the times that you're having your main meals, your 3 main meals, and then there's the optional snacks in between. And then you can see the blood sugar levels is quite fairly stable, not going too far up and down during the whole day. That's normal eating patterns. And then when this healthy individual starts fasting, there is a prolonged period of not eating. And you can see the blood sugar levels more or less is stable. And then when you break your fast when you start your suhoor, so that's the sleeping time and the fasting time, and then you start your suhoor, and then your iftar. Sorry, I think the labels are mixed up. So the iftar is here and the suhoor is here. But as you can see, the big changes and then the erratic changes in blood sugar levels in this period. And people that stay up late at night, which the study was based on as well, you can see that the blood sugar levels is quite erratic. And then as you can see, the last one is the prolonged fasting, and that's where starvation is. And this is also just to compare people when they did continuous blood sugar level reading on someone or healthy individuals, and they also did continuous blood sugar level readings in people with diabetes. You can also see the blue line is before Ramadan. So again, stable blood sugar levels. The blue line doesn't go far out very low or very high in blood sugar levels. So these numbers on the side here is the readings of your blood sugar levels. And during Ramadan, you can see there's a slow, the blood sugar levels is going down just before iftar. And when you break your fast, your blood sugar levels, your glucose levels is restored in the body, and you can see it also follows a more subtle normal trend here as well. But in people with diabetes, the picture is quite different. There is big drops and then big highs, which is not recommended in people with diabetes. So the blue line is before Ramadan, not too far out from each other, but during Ramadan. So this blood sugar levels coming down, but you just need to watch how low it's going. But that big increase is definitely not recommended. Okay, so if you were taking note, you would obviously see that these changes that's happening in your lifestyle when you're fasting during Ramadan, there are specific changes that's happening, and there is a need for practical guidelines for people to know how to manage their lifestyle and how to manage their medication and how to manage their any specific chronic diseases they have in order for them to fast safely. So there is a need for practical guidelines. So the population of Muslims around the world is, and this is based on an article in 2015, it estimated that there are 1.8 billion Muslims around the world. That's about 24% of world population. It's probably more by now. And then in South Africa, based on 2016 statistics, there's about 893,000 Muslims or more. And the Western Cape has the highest percentage of Muslims in South Africa, almost 40%. And then interestingly, Cape Town has the majority of those Muslims. So in South Africa's a westernized country, we are the minority. So fasting Muslims, and especially those with chronic diseases, living as a minority in a country might need extra attention. So healthcare professionals, so that's your doctor, your dietitian, or the nurses, or any person in healthcare that is going to help you with any medical condition, they might not be experienced in dealing with fasting Muslims, and therefore they might not consult you about the changes that needs to be done. And this leads to Muslims fasting without consulting their physicians, because whether it's going to be Muslim or non-Muslim physicians, they'll assume, maybe they'll tell them you can't fast, and then they make their own adjustment to medication, which could be not a good idea. So I'm quickly going to go through medical management. I'm not going to go too in detail in this. So fasting Ramadan can influence Muslim patients' health and disease management. So it's important for the healthcare professional to be culturally competent and knowledgeable about the basics of Ramadan. So they need to know who are exempted from fasting. They also need to know what treatments and procedures breaks your fast. They also need to know what's the effect of fasting on managing patients with diabetes, cardiovascular conditions like high blood pressure, or certain cardiac or heart issues, gastrointestinal, so that's the gut issues. We have peptic ulcers, or patients that have chronic kidney issues, and many other common diseases. So it's important for that the physician that has a knowledge of these medical things to know how to adapt for someone that's wanting to fast. And just to give an example, for those with diabetes, the safety with regards to fasting is dependent on a risk scoring system that hopefully you would wish that your physician knows about, so he can score you and determine whether it's safe for you to fast or not. And also he needs to do adjustments for your medication. And then there are not clear guidelines for all medical conditions, but diabetes is specific, where they've put in a lot of effort to put guidelines in. And I've also, if there's any medical people watching, I've also at the end attached a reference for where a lot of these guidelines are coming from. So an individualized approach is very important in treating fasting Muslim patients during Ramadan. And it's necessary for those that intend to fast to visit their physician at least 6 weeks, which is about 1.5 months before Ramadan, in order to be assessed and to see if there's adjustments that could be made to their medication in order for them to fast safer, because we know patients would fast in any case. And education on how to deal with complications during Ramadan and after Ramadan, follow-ups are also necessary. This is just a diagram from that document that I mentioned. So the risk stratification would either put you at a low risk, moderate risk, or high risk. And based on that, the doctor needs to make adjustments to your medication. And for those that have diabetes, and it's either someone that's listening to this talk, or it could be a family member that you know of, or a friend. So it's also useful information to know. So this is the recommended times when testing blood sugar levels need to happen for those with diabetes. And there are 7 times that you can do that. And it's also important to note that using your insulin and checking blood sugar levels regularly does not break the fast. So now we're coming to the interesting part of the talk. So it's the Ramadan nutrition plan. So the Sunnah way, and let's see what the Prophet ﷺ have to say. Man does not fill any container worse than his stomach. A few morsels of food are sufficient to keep his back straight. If he cannot do so, then he should keep 1/3 of his stomach for food, 1/3 for water, and 1/3 for air. So this hadith is very important to help us as Muslims to just understand what is the recommended way. There's so many guidelines in our religion of how to live, how to eat, how to be with each other. And then I think this hadith just summarizes how we need to deal with our food and our diet. And this dua that we also say when we break our fast is, thirst is gone, the blood is refreshed, and the reward is granted by the grace of Allah. So ذهب الظمأ وابتلت العروق وثبت الأجر إن شاء الله. So that's a dua you make after you break your fast. And this is just indicating that the portion control is very important, and the bare minimum that we need is just to quench our thirst, for the blood to be refreshed, and then to get the reward, inshallah. But how far are we from the Sunnah way of eating? So let me go into the common unhealthy habits that we've developed as Muslim communities during Ramadan. Large meals at iftar time. This can lead to severe high blood sugar levels, indigestion, heartburn, and weight gain. We have highly processed carbohydrates. So those are the foods that have sugars in, so it gives energy. The energy that it gives is from sugars. And desserts loaded with sugar at iftar or between iftar and suhoor, and this also leads to high blood sugar levels. Large portions, frequently eating snacks between the two main meals. So it's constant eating. And remember, the time between the fast or your non-fasting hours, it's much shorter than your fasting hours. So frequent eating means that you're not really getting a break. Your digestive system is not really getting a break. So you basically going against the intention of Ramadan fasting. So there's extended periods of high blood sugar levels. Blood sugar levels is not getting, so this is people with diabetes, without diabetes. Blood sugar levels is not getting a chance to, stabilize. You'll get indigestion, heartburn, and also have a sluggish feeling. And that also affects you when you're going for your Taraweeh Salah. And then eating at fast speed. So overeating is a common problem even outside of Ramadan. So the satiety signals of basically when you're going to feel full, it usually takes around 30 minutes to reach the brain from the start of eating. So if you are eating very fast in a few minutes, obviously you're not going to have that full feeling, and you continue eating, and then eventually when 30 minutes passed, you've eaten past your capacity of your stomach, and that's where the stomach pains and uncomfortable feeling comes in. Too much caffeine, so either before or during Ramadan. So this will cause withdrawals, so tiredness and headaches and dehydration, and it's recommended to gradually reduce this before the Ramadan starts to avoid that feeling. And then another common unhealthy habits that we've developed is some people skip suhoor because they're not used to eating so early, or they don't have an appetite to eat, and we'll address that. Or they're consuming suhoor too early. So that's going against the sunnah. So the Prophet ﷺ recommended us to have suhoor because there's barakah in it. And obviously it's to maintain your energy levels throughout your fasting period. So doing that will cause low blood sugar levels, which is the hypoglycemia, and especially before iftar. And then especially when fasting hours are longer than usual. So those that are fasting longer than 12, 15 hours can be quite dangerous. And then large portions of high glycemic index carbohydrates. So glycemic index is to do with the speed that the energy or the sugars or the carbohydrates come out of food. So if it's a high glycemic index, it means the sugars are coming or the energy is coming out quite fast from the food as soon as you eat it. So we don't recommend that too much. It causes also high blood sugar levels. And these types of carbohydrates or starches is generally low in fiber and can also lead to constipation. And frequent high fats or fried foods. That's a very common thing in Ramadan. So outside of Ramadan, generally people don't have so many savories. And then for one full month of Ramadan, that is when the savory sales go up, and that's when the table is filled with anything savory. And that's, I would say, unhealthy habits. So you'll get all the unhealthy fats, and this will cause your cholesterol to go up. It will cause indigestion, cause heartburn. And then there's also changes in physical activity and sleep patterns that happen during Ramadan, and this affects your metabolism, and it can also contribute, along with your unhealthy eating habits, it can definitely contribute to weight gain, which is the actual opposite of what we want to happen in Ramadan. And then there's also reduced water intake, which is also an unhealthy habit that happens. We have long fasting periods, and you should try to ensure that you check how much fluids you get in during your non-fasting hours. So we want to avoid the tiredness, the dehydration, the constipation, and the headaches. And these are all these symptoms that I mentioned. It makes your fasting very unpleasant. So we really need to look into our practices that we do. So as you can see from everything that I mentioned, the impact of the diet on your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is made very apparent, very obvious in Ramadan. And the following guidelines that I'm going to go through are intended to support healthier eating at your two main meals during Ramadan, it's suhoor and iftar, and one or two optional snacks. And this will obviously help support your fast and a safer fast. And that's ultimately what we want, so that we can focus on all our spirituality and extra ibadah and all the good deeds that we want to do. Okay, so the 10 principles of the Ramadan nutrition plan that you could look at is you want to divide, so you're going to have two main meals. You want to divide your energy levels equally between these two main meals. And if you would like to snack in between, those snacks need to be small and it can't be a whole nother meal. So it's your third meal. So the point of Ramadan is not to make up during your non-fasting hours for all the food you've missed out on. It's actually, you need to cut down. So it's the two main meals and the two snacks are optional. And your meals should be balanced. So you're not going to have, you shouldn't be having high sugar intake, and you are lacking in your other important ingredients of the food for your body to be healthy, which is your proteins and your fats. And you can see that there are percentages. So when you consult a dietitian, she can help you, or he can help you with achieving this. And if you cannot afford a dietitian or do not have the time to go to a dietitian, the general healthy plate, which we now call the Ramadan plate, is a nice method that can help to design your meals. So if you fill in those sections, we'll go through that. You'll see it the next slide. You'll see how you can fit your different food groups into these portions to make sure you get enough of everything. And we want to avoid sugar-heavy desserts. We want to minimize high-fat foods. Those are the fatty red meats. Those that people are cooking with the fat. And then processed meats, ghee, and takeaways. We want to avoid or minimize those things. And then we want to emphasize of having low GI foods. So I mentioned before the high GI or glycemic index foods. So this is the opposite. Low GI will cause slow release of energy, which is what you want to have during your fasting hours. You want a slow release of energy so you can have a good day. And that is found in the high fiber carbohydrates or starch foods, and it's preferred. Obviously, besides the slow release of sugars, it has other health benefits for stabilizing blood sugar levels as well. And then hydration is very, very important. It should be maintained between your meals. So in the time that you're constantly snacking should be the time when you should be having lots of fluids or water. And you can be drinking water or non-sweetened beverages. And it's important not to skip suhoor, like we mentioned before, and taking it as late as possible. And to have adequate, so enough lean protein, so that means taking off the extra fat, and plant-based fats. So plant-based fats meaning fats coming from plants and not fats coming from animal fats. And then, or animal meats. And it should be consumed at suhoor to induce satiety or fullness. And then iftar should begin with water. So you've been fasting, your body is lacking in fluids and in sugars, quick sugars. So that's what you're going to break your fast with, and that's the recommended sunnah to do. The Prophet ﷺ said to break your fast with dates, with water. And he also recommended odd number of dates. And for those that have to watch their blood sugar levels, 1 is an odd number. I wouldn't recommend to go more than 3 because you're going to be having other foods as well. So rehydrate with water and 1 to 2 days to raise blood sugar levels. So you're making up for what was lost. And then low calorie snacks. So the optional snacks, it's going to be fruits, nuts, vegetables, and can be consumed between meals. So this is the Ramadan plate that I was speaking about. So as you can see, the plate is portioned. There's a portion for vegetables. And when we speak about vegetables, we speak about non-starch vegetables. And I'll go through with the following slides what they are. And there's rice, there's lentils or peas, so that's your legumes, and there's proteins, that's on your main plate. And that can easily be made also into soups. And then there's vegetables on the, fruit on the side. It doesn't have to be watermelon, but it can be any fruit. And then there's your water. And the 2 teaspoons of oil that you see here. So that's the recommended amount of oil per meal that you're going to have during Ramadan. So if someone's making in bulk, they're going to make a pot of food. If there's going to be 4 people eating from the pot of food, the most amount of teaspoons of oil you can add in the cooking process would be 8 teaspoons of sugar, because each person will get equal amount of that. So examples of suhoor food items. Glass of water 30 minutes before suhoor. You want to get in that extra fluids because you're going to have a long dry fast. Whole wheat cereal, so cereals with lots of fiber in and with low fat or full cream milk. Either one of them should be fine. Whole wheat bread with egg or peanut butter or avocado or fish like tuna or pilchards. And an omelette with large green salad. Fresh fruit, preferably not ripe, because if it's overripe, it's going to cause quick release of sugars. And for a suhoor meal, you don't want quick release of sugars, you want long extended release of sugars. So take a fruit that's not overripe. Plain yogurt with pieces of fruit. And if you're going to have a plain yogurt, you can have that with fruit. Or if you're going to have sweetened yogurt or flavored yogurt, you can also have that, but then it should be a smaller portion because there's added sugars in. And for those who aren't hungry, so they don't usually have an appetite in the morning, so something to drink that's quick and easy, just make a smoothie, can add raw oats, add milk, and you can add fruit pieces or peanut butter or avocado or whey protein powder. So that's the filling part of the meal or the smoothie. Or you could use a meal replacement that contains a balanced combination of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So it has all your main ingredients that's needed. And examples of iftar items. So breaking your fast with a glass of water or a bowl of vegetable soup containing legumes, so that's beans, peas, and lentils, and try to limit creamy soups. So 1 or 2 dates, mentioned that before, it contains a very important electrolytes and it's a quick source of energy. So that's the sunnah way as well. 1 baked or air fried samosa or savory item, that's fine. And having a 10 to 15 minute break between breaking your fast and having your main meal. And then your main meal can be whatever is prepared, but portion control is important. So I've mentioned there a fist-sized portion of rice, potato or bread, and a palm size, so that's the inner part of your hand, of the protein. So that would be your meat, chicken, fish, or eggs, preferably no batter. So that's adding calories. 2 open handfuls, so meaning a lot of non-starch vegetables, and preferably not to put sauces over these vegetables. And adapting cultural, you can adapt your favorite cultural drinks like boba and faluda to contain less sugars and less fat. So when you are making them, try to make the milk that you use maybe low fat and add in less sugars when you're making it. So the non-starch vegetables that was mentioned, this excludes potatoes, sweet potato, butternut, and corn. Those are the starchy vegetables. And snacks between iftar and suhoor can be fresh fruit, plain mixed nuts, plain yogurt, fresh fruit, and whole wheat crackers or low-fat cheese or peanut butter. So just note that there were no exact amounts given, as this will depend on whether you would like to stay the same weight that you are, you want to lose weight, or do you want to gain weight, or control your blood sugar levels if you are living with diabetes. So then your amounts will have to be adapted to how much you need to fulfill these your goals. So if you are struggling with achieving your dietary health or weight goals, a registered dietitian can be consulted for an individualized meal plan that will suit your needs, or it can be tailored to you if you have any medical condition. So this is just an example, just to show the distribution of energy from your foods between your meals. So it's suhoor over there, and then your iftar meal over there. There's the biggest percentage of where your energy from your food is coming from. And then you can see your snacks, it's a much smaller proportion of your total diet. And this, a dietitian can work out for you. This is also just to know that for those that want to maintain their weight, for men, this is the calories per day that is needed. And then for females that are shorter than 150 centimeters or taller, sorry, that's taller and this one is shorter. And that's also the calories that needs to be looked at. So again, a registered dietitian can work that out if you want to be specific with your goals. So, and this brings me to the conclusion of my talk. So Ramadan is a deeply spiritual time with a high significance to all Muslims. The specific religious acts may cause a sudden and temporary change in lifestyle practices, so in your meal times, your physical activity, your sleep patterns, your social interaction. And in Ramadan can rebalance areas in our lives where we have gotten out of control, and we can begin to realign when we take away the overstimulation of overeating. And then those with chronic diseases will want to fast despite granted exemptions. So they just need to consult with their physician to start the conversation of getting them assessed and see what's their risk score, and so that they know, and then also that they can have valuable education attached with that. And then follow the sunnah way of eating. Portion control is very important, and then seek the guidance of a registered dietitian if you are struggling with meeting your goals, your health goals that you'd like to achieve. And that's a reference for any medical people in this chat that would like to see the diabetes specific guidelines. And that's it from me. Shukran. Any questions? Wasfia, should I go ahead with answering the questions? So I see there's just one question. Would you recommend a plant-based diet as opposed to an animal-based diet? If fixed, what approximate proportion should I be consuming ideally between animal and plant? So I would not answer that without knowing what conditions you have and what's your preference and what's your affordability. So I always recommend a balance. So you can have plants in your diet, you can have animal fats or animal meats in your diet. It's all depending on what suits you and what's your health condition. And then if you follow the healthy plate, so we mentioned, or I mentioned, maybe if I can go back to I think I'm taking the long route. Okay, so this is, we call it the Ramadan plate. And because you are moving to your 3 main meals into 2 meals, there's a bit of an adjustment to the usual, but the usual healthy plate would be half of your plate would be your non-starch vegetables, and a quarter of your plate would be your whole grain starches, and then the other quarter would be your proteins. So there's a balance between those two. I always recommend the balance unless you prefer to want to eat a plant-based diet or you would prefer to eat the animal-based diet. I wouldn't though recommend to just have animal proteins and nothing else. It depends on you. So you will have to go through an individualized assessment. Okay, so other question is how would be, how do you implement nutritional changes in a household when my family is so used to traditions in Ramadan? So you would have to sit down with your family and tell them about your intention of making these changes. It is our religious duty as Muslims to put in only tayyib and good stuff into our body. You can still keep the traditional stuff of Ramadan, but it needs to be adapted. And if there are medical conditions in the family household or not, we still need to follow a healthier eating pattern. If no one has any conditions, that healthy eating pattern will help maintain your health. If there's someone that's on borderline getting diabetes or high blood pressure or cholesterol, obviously this healthier eating changes is going to make sure you don't become in that range or become having chronic diseases develop. And if you have in your family household people with already medical conditions, it's even more important that everyone make the change. I don't believe in one person being isolated to make changes. So it has to be a discussion with the family, sitting down, saying this is your intention and hear everyone's views and meet each other halfway. There can be one of each of these traditional items. So we're limiting to one person and try maybe to have days where you don't have it and see how it goes. So the goal should be that everyone is getting their voice heard to say what they would like to do. And eating, I know that it's my job. So eating and changing diet habits is a very sensitive topic for many people. So making changes is something that someone needs to be on board with. How willing are they to make these changes? And sometimes you just need to try it out and see how it goes and take it from there. I hope that helped. What is the amount of honey you can use? That's a very vague question. So it depends. Do you have diabetes? Do you not have diabetes? But regardless, honey, sugar, brown sugar, white sugar, all of them have the effect of pushing up blood sugar levels. The recommendation is not to have more than 3 to 4 teaspoons of added sugars in your diet. So not more than 3 to 4 teaspoons of honey would be the equivalent. Can you give me some explains ways to eat as I'm breastfeeding and mainly at night as my son drinks most of the evening? So breastfeeding moms, your diet will increase depending on how often you are breastfeeding. You don't necessarily have to eat for 2, but you just have to make sure that your diet is adequate. Are you fasting? Are you not fasting? So I need more information. But drinking lots of fluids is very important. And also to make sure you have a balanced diet. There's no specific things. And if you feel like you're not meeting your balanced diet and you need a bit of extra boost, and then taking supplements like vitamins or minerals is also recommended for those mothers that are breastfeeding. That's also important. You can have a meal replacement as well. If you are 150 centimeters, 45 kilograms, what is a portion more or less? And can you do honey in place of sugar? So this I would have to do calculations and working out lots of things. So I can't really answer that just off the top of my head, just based on your weight and height. We actually need more information than that to determine what would be your portions. So it's not as simple as it seems. And can you do honey in place of sugar? So I covered that before the previous questions. Honey, sugar, whether white or brown, has the same amount of calories and same effect on your body. You mentioned palm oil and coconut oil. I didn't have a chance to read the slide. Can you just run through it if it's regarded as healthy or unhealthy? So I don't have a problem with consumption of any plant-based oils. I think what's more important that you need to look at is your amounts that you're taking, and if it is in your proportion that you're allowed to have of fats for the day. But studies do show that coconut oil is more saturated fats. But I personally don't have a problem with that if you are having a balanced diet. Joined late, but wanted to know what should come first between fresh fruits and cooked food at iftar. So I think this person's meaning, should they break their iftar with fresh fruits or with cooked foods? You can have fresh fruits to break your fast. Will have extra sugars in, not a problem. And your cooked meal can be after 15 minutes. But if you don't have fresh fruits and you just have your cooked meal, you can have that as well. What's the best time for exercise walking during fasting? Can it be 2 hours before iftar? So that's specific to exercise and physical activity. I don't think there's an ideal time, but preferably to do it during your non-fasting hours, and so you can do it early in the morning, but try not to do it also before iftar time, because that could lower your blood sugar levels quite considerably just before breaking your fast. Pregnant women and fasting. So I would need a whole other presentation for that specific topic. Again, pregnancy or fasting during pregnancy. So my presentation is for the general population. I haven't included anything specific to those that are breastfeeding or pregnant. I would need to do another slide or talk on that specifically, just to give it justice on giving good guidelines. Is basmati rice suitable replacement, or does it have to be brown rice? So the emphasis is firstly portion control, and then when you look at the quality, brown rice would have a slower release of energy, but if you are eating the same amount of basmati rice and the same amount of brown rice, that's also fine. I'm not very pedantic on the type of rice, but whole grain rice, as you can see, has a longer release of energy or sugars into your body. Okay, about breastfeeding and fasting. Okay, yes, as I mentioned, I would need a specific talk to cover that as well. Are there any other questions? I see this pregnant and breastfeeding is coming up quite often. So my talk again, I'm not talking about fasting in pregnancy. I am talking specifically about the general population. So pregnant, when you're asking about that, is it pregnant woman fasting? Is it pregnant woman not fasting? I'm unsure. But yes. Don't know if there are any other questions. drinking 4 glasses of water for suhoor, that's about depending when are you drinking it. Are you drinking it? So we recommend to have it, to start drinking the water a bit earlier and not just as you're having everything else. So it might make you too full and then you won't have any space in your tummy for any of the foods that you need to have. So I would say a gradual intake, 2 glasses. If you can manage, 4 might be a bit much at the time of suhoor. I would say taking it a bit earlier to gradually get in your water intake. Okay. So it's now 8 o'clock. Wanting to know if that is the end of the session. Okay, if there are no other questions. So for the pregnant and the breastfeeding woman, so those questions are specific, and some people also asked about the specific weights and heights. Certain topics requires more explanation and also knowing more about the person asking. And I feel that pregnancy and also breastfeeding needs its own talk. And if it's during Ramadan or outside of Ramadan, that also makes a difference, because breastfeeding and pregnant ladies do have the exemption of not fasting. So I'm not sure if the questions were asked with regards to whether they're fasting or not. I think that's the end of the presentation. And if there are no other questions, then we can end the session. Shukran for everyone for attending and for all your interesting questions. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.